Alien Empress abducts a human as a pet, only to get tamed herself. Have you ever wondered what happens when the prey turns the tables and tames the hunter? Out in the vastness of space, a cold, ruthless alien empress abducts a human man to keep as her pet. She expects fear, begging, maybe even rage. But instead, he smiles, and that's only the beginning. What is the true weakness of the most powerful woman in the galaxy? Can a heart frozen for centuries finally learn to feel again? And when it comes down to a choice between absolute power and unexpected love, what is real strength? Join us as we dive into the incredible story of a hunter who never saw it coming and a bond that could change the stars. This is Commander Lyra of the Andromeda Alliance. Her voice cut through the control deck, cold and commanding. Blue lights flickered against her polished black armor, casting an aura of lethal beauty. Log entry, day 553, Galactic Standard Calendar. Today I captured an interesting specimen from a low-tier planet called Earth, a creature calling itself a human. Fragile, but far more fascinating than I anticipated. The prisoner bay hissed open. In the dim light, a young man sat cross-legged on the floor. Messy brown hair, a worn leather jacket, and an air of complete nonchalance. No cuffs, no chains. He looked less like a captive, and more like he was lounging in his own living room. This human identifies as Elias Wright, 32 years old according to their primitive timekeeping. At first glance, he appears to be a standard Class C life form, and yet something feels off. Lyra's slender fingers danced over the console, enlarging an image of Elias's face on the main screen. Like all lesser beings, he should have reacted with fear, desperation, maybe even violence. But this one, she paused. He's smiling. Sure enough, Elias stared directly into the surveillance camera, a faint smile playing on his lips. No fear in those sharp green eyes, not even a flicker. When our ship seized him, he didn't resist. When my soldiers restrained him, he didn't fight. And when I personally declared that he would serve as little more than a research pet, Lyra's voice wavered for the briefest second. He offered to make me a cup of tea. Never in all her conquests had she encountered such a reaction. Even the fierce warriors of Proxima had trembled before her fleet. But this fragile human acted like he was the one in control. The camera zoomed in closer. Elias sat by the viewport now, gazing out at the swirl of the Milky Way, wonder lighting up his expression. I will uncover this human's secrets, Lyra vowed, her tone sharpening. I will break him. I, Commander Lyra, have never failed a mission. Suddenly, Elias turned, his smile widening just slightly. A subtle nod, as if daring her to try. What intrigues me most, Lyra continued, is not just his lack of fear, but the way he looks at this situation, like it's an adventure. Or worse, like it's exactly what he's been waiting for. An alarm blared through the ship, cutting into her thoughts. A soldier burst onto the bridge. Commander, the human, he's escaped from the detention bay. Lyra shot to her feet, eyes narrowing dangerously. Impossible! Our security systems are flawless. No life form could... Good morning, Commander, a warm, casual voice said behind her. There he was. Elias stood leaning against the doorway, hands stuffed casually into his jacket pockets. No guards, no weapons, just that same maddening, effortless grin. I was wondering, he said smoothly, could you point me toward the coffee station? Long trip. I could use a pick-me-up. And just like that, he smiled again. Calm, confident, utterly fearless. Are you wondering what the hell is going on? How could a normal human stay so cool in front of a galactic warlord? Drop your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next twist in this mind-bending story. Initiate Training Session 4. Commander Lyra stood tall outside the training arena, hands clasped behind her back, watching with a steely gaze. It had been a week since they captured Elias. Earth creature, kneel! 6 Andromeda guards in sleek black armor closed in around him, crackling electro whips hissing in the charged air. The training room resembled a miniature coliseum with rows of seats circling the center stage. Elias stood calmly in the middle, still wearing his faded jeans and battered leather jacket. He glanced around, then slowly dropped down on one knee. "Wrong!" the lead guard barked. "Both knees, like the animal you are." Elias tilted his head up, flashing a crooked smile. "Technically," he said lightly, "on Earth, kneeling on one knee is a sign of respect during formal ceremonies. Both knees, usually reserved for prayer or more desperate situations." A whip cracked dangerously close to his leg. "Silence when not spoken to," the guard growled. Lyra watched without blinking. This was the fourth session this week. The first three had all failed. Elias didn't resist, but he also didn't break. An equation she'd never encountered before. "Now crawl around the room like the lowly creature you are," another guard ordered. Elias slowly scanned the room, then unexpectedly beamed a wide smile. "You guys want to play a game? I know one that's way more fun." The room froze. No one had anticipated that reaction. "On Earth, we have a game called Follow the Leader. Everyone copies whatever the leader does. Want to give it a try?" Before anyone could stop him, Elias stood up and began clapping his hands, spinning in a slow circle, hopping in place. The guards exchanged confused glances. One of the smaller recruits, clearly a rookie, hesitantly mimicked the clapping, awkward and mechanical. "Zex 9, stand down immediately," the commander barked. But Elias approached the rookie with a warm smile. "Good job. Now try this." He traced a circle in the air with his hand. For reasons beyond anyone's understanding, Zex 9 followed, waving his armored arm in a big circle. "Perfect," Elias said, laughing. "Now you be the leader. Show me something." Zex 9 hesitated, then drew an arrow pointing upward. Elias nodded and hopped higher into the air, earning a strange robotic giggle from the rookie. "Enough!" Lyra stormed into the arena, her voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "This is not a game. This is discipline training." Elias turned to face her directly, unflinching. "Commander, have you ever considered," he said calmly, "that discipline can be taught through more than just fear and pain?" "Silence!" Lyra snapped, striding toward him, eyes blazing hot enough to melt steel. "What are you trying to do? Brainwash my soldiers?" "No," Elias said, still maddeningly serene. "I'm just showing them that learning can actually be fun. On Earth, we've discovered that joy is the most powerful tool for teaching." Lyra felt a chill, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. For the first time in her career, she wasn't commanding a prisoner. She was having a conversation with one. And worse, her elite guards, soldiers trained to follow orders without question, were listening. Over the next 3 days, every training session unraveled the same way. Elias turned every punishment into a lesson, every insult into an opportunity for dialogue. And the strangest part, the guards started looking forward to it. "Commander," the chief of security reported on the 8th day, "the human, he's changing my squad." Lyra stood silently at the observation window, staring into the endless sea of stars. Finally, she spoke. "Bring him to my chambers. I'll deal with this personally." Meanwhile, back in the detention room, Elias sat cross-legged, patiently teaching Zex 9 and 2 other guards how to fold paper cranes out of scrap paper. "On Earth," he explained gently, "we believe that if you fold 1,000 cranes, your wish will come true." "Any wish?" Zex 9 asked, his voice filled with wonder. Elias smiled. "Any wish at all. But the real magic isn't in the result. It's in the patience and the hope." "I don't understand," another guard said. "If there's no guaranteed outcome, why bother?" "That," Elias said, his voice growing soft, "is the heart of hope. And maybe that's the one lesson your commander needs most." Are you curious about the upcoming showdown between Elias and the indomitable Commander Lyra? Will his reverse taming strategy actually succeed? Drop your predictions in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next thrilling chapter. Assembly. The command echoed through the grand hall of the Andromeda warship. Hundreds of soldiers lined up in perfect formation, standing like statues beneath the pale blue lights. It was the 15th day since Elias had been captured. Commander Lyra entered, each step of her armored boots striking sharply against the steel floor. Her jet black armor gleamed under the cold lighting, radiating an aura of pure authority and danger. Behind her, Elias was escorted in. No chains, no restraints, flanked by just 2 guards. "Today we have a serious matter to address," Lyra announced, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Zex-9, step forward." The young recruit shuffled out of line, trembling. Even though his emotions were hidden beneath the alien armor, the droop of his shoulders and the heaviness in his steps said it all. "You have committed a grave error," Lyra declared. "You allowed a rare research specimen to escape the lab. That creature represented 5 years of research. It was irreplaceable." Silence blanketed the hall. Everyone knew the punishment for such a mistake. "By the laws of the Andromeda Alliance," Lyra continued coldly, "the penalty is ejection into the void." A collective shudder rippled through the ranks. Ejection, being hurled into open space without protection, was among the most horrifying deaths imaginable. "Carry out the sentence," Lyra ordered. 2 guards stepped towards Zex-9. The young soldier visibly shook, emitting a soft, choked sound, almost a sob. "Wait!" Elias's voice rang out, clear and steady. He stepped forward, placing himself between Zex-9 and the guards. A deathly silence fell. No one, especially a prisoner, was allowed to interfere with a commander's judgment. "Humans, step back!" one guard barked. Elias didn't move. Instead, he looked straight into Lyra's eyes. "Commander, may I speak?" he asked firmly. Lyra narrowed her gaze, a flicker of irritation and curiosity crossing her features. "You dare interfere with our justice?" "Not interfere," Elias said calmly. "Offer an alternative." "We are not on Earth," Lyra replied icily. "True," Elias nodded. "But I wonder, for such an advanced civilization, have you ever considered the true cost of losing a trained soldier?" Lyra blinked. This wasn't an emotional plea for mercy. This was cold, logical reasoning, the kind the Andromeda Alliance respected. "Speak," she said, almost against her own instincts. "How long was Zex-9 trained to become a soldier?" Elias asked. 12 cycles, a commander answered. "And the cost of training a replacement?" "Roughly 5,000 resource units," the officer replied, clearly thrown off by the exchange. Elias nodded as if confirming a calculation. "And the value of the lost specimen?" Lyra's frown deepened. 3,000 units. "Then from a purely economic standpoint," Elias concluded, "executing Zex-9 would cost you more than the loss of the specimen itself, not to mention the experience he's gained, something no amount of resources can replace." The hall remained dead silent. All eyes were fixed on Lyra. "And more importantly," Elias continued, his voice softening, "I believe Zex-9 will never make that mistake again. In fact, after this, he might become the most careful soldier you have." "And how would you know that?" Lyra asked, her voice no longer as sharp. Elias turned towards Zex-9, placing a gentle hand on the young recruit's armored shoulder. "Because I've taught him the value of patience and caution. Haven't I, Zex-9?" The rookie nodded vigorously, emitting a small hiccuping sound, the alien equivalent of a sob. "And," Elias added, voice firm now, "if you allow it, I'll take personal responsibility for him. If he ever slips up again, punish me instead." A murmur rippled through the room. Shock, disbelief, awe. Nothing like this had ever happened in the history of the Andromeda Alliance. Lyra stood frozen, her piercing eyes locked onto Elias. She studied him, searching for deceit, for manipulation. But all she found was honesty and something else, something unfamiliar, stirring inside her. "You would risk your life," she finally said, "for a being you barely know?" "My name is Elias," he answered gently. "And yes, I would." For the first time in her life, Lyra hesitated. There were no protocols for this, no battle plans, no manuals. Why? She asked, the question slipping out softer than she intended. Elias smiled, not the defiant grin he often wore, but a warm, sincere smile, because it's the right thing to do. 5 simple words, yet they echoed through the great hall like thunder. And deep within Lyra, something stirred, something she hadn't felt in many, many years. Zex 9, she declared after a long pause, you are spared, but you will serve under the supervision of Elias. Any future infractions will be judged upon both of you. Zex 9 let out an uncontrollable sound of joy and bowed deeply. Elias simply gave a small, respectful nod, never breaking eye contact with Lyra. As the soldiers dispersed, Lyra found herself still watching Elias, leading Zex 9 away. For the first time, she felt less like a commander and more like a student. Commander? Her aide spoke up hesitantly. The Empress has contacted us. She's asking when we'll deliver the human for experimentation. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She was still watching Elias, this man from a small, forgotten planet who had done what no battle-hardened warrior ever dared, stand up for the weak, even if it cost him everything. Tell the Empress, Lyra said finally, her voice unreadable, that I need more time. I'm still studying this specimen. Has your view of humanity been challenged by Elias's actions? Is true strength found not in domination, but in compassion and courage? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful chapter. Elias Wright of Earth, come with me. Lyra's voice rang out suddenly, interrupting the tic-tac-toe lesson Elias was giving 3 young recruits. 3 weeks had passed since the incident with Zex 9, and Elias now moved more freely around the ship, though always under close watch. Lyra stood in the doorway, tall and unreadable. Her new armor was sleeker, more elegant, but it still radiated authority and danger. Commander, Elias greeted her with a familiar, easy smile before turning to the recruits. We'll pick this up later, all right? He followed Lyra down the long, echoing corridors of the warship. Neither spoke. Only the sound of their footsteps rang against the cold metal floors. And yet Elias noticed something different. The soldiers no longer glared at him with hatred or fear. Some even nodded respectfully as he passed. Eventually they reached a room he had never seen before. Inside floated a miniature holographic map of the galaxy, planets and stars shimmering and suspended in midair. Impressive, Elias said, genuinely awed. This is my strategy room, Lyra replied, sealing the door behind them. The place where I plan our most critical operations. She stepped to the center console and tapped a control. The galaxy shifted, zooming in to reveal a familiar blue and green world. Earth, Elias breathed, a sudden wave of homesickness hitting him hard. Yes, you're Earth, Lyra turned to face him directly. I've been observing you, Elias. Over the past 3 weeks, you've changed more on this ship than some generals do in a lifetime. I still haven't decided if that's a good thing or a threat. Elias said nothing. He could feel it. This meeting was bigger than it appeared. I have an offer for you, Lyra continued, her tone sharpening. A choice. She tapped another control. A small scout ship appeared in the hologram, positioned near Earth. This vessel can return you home. You'll be free. Elias raised an eyebrow, truly surprised. What's the catch? A small smile played at Lyra's lips. Smart. Yes, there is one. She handed him a small device, something like a wristband. This contains genomic data on our species and classified information about our weapons and defenses. You will deliver it to your scientists on Earth. Elias turned the device over in his hands. Why? The Andromeda Alliance is considering conquering Earth, Lyra said bluntly, but we prefer a clean takeover. Minimal bloodshed. This information will convince your leaders that resistance is pointless. Billions of lives will be spared. The room fell into heavy silence. Elias stared at the floating image of Earth, then back at the device. And if I refuse, he asked quietly, then you'll remain here as a prisoner until the Alliance decides your fate. and Earth will face a full invasion. No warning, no mercy. Elias moved closer to the projection of Earth, the soft blue glow reflecting in his eyes. How long had he been gone? 3 weeks? It felt like a lifetime. Why give me a choice at all? Elias asked, not turning around. You could torture me, or just invade without warning. I don't know, Lyra admitted, and for the first time, there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. Maybe I want to understand why you risked everything for Zex-9, why you taught my soldiers games instead of plotting your escape. Elias turned to meet her gaze, his eyes deep and unwavering. And you think this choice will give you answers? I hope so. Elias was silent for a long moment, weighing everything. Then he calmly placed the device down on the console. I refuse both options, he said. Lyra blinked, clearly caught off guard. There is no third option. There's always a third option, Elias smiled. I choose to stay, not as a prisoner, not as a traitor, but as a teacher. Teacher? Lyra repeated the word as if it were foreign to her. Yes, Elias nodded, confidence growing in his voice. I'll stay and teach your soldiers about compassion, about cooperation, about how true strength isn't built on fear. And in return, Lyra asked, still skeptical. In return, Elias said, I ask that you postpone the invasion of Earth. Give me 1 year. If, after that year, you still believe force is the only answer, I won't stop you. Lyra stepped closer, so close that Elias could see the dark violet of her eyes reflecting the starlight around them. Why should I agree? You have nothing to bargain with. Elias didn't back down. Because you're curious, and deep down, you know something isn't right about how the Alliance does things. Lyra wanted to deny it, to shut him down. But no words came, because part of her, a part buried deep, knew he was right. 1 year, she said at last, her voice almost reluctant. I'll give you 1 year. Not because I believe you'll succeed, but because I want to see you fail. Elias only smiled. Thank you, Commander. As they exited the strategy room, Lyra couldn't help but wonder if she had just made the biggest mistake of her career, or if she had opened a door to something the Alliance had never dared to imagine, a new way to wield power. Watching Elias return to the waiting recruits, Lyra found herself wondering, could one human really change an empire? And somewhere deep inside, a part of her, a part she had never acknowledged, hoped he could. Do you think Elias made the right call? Can compassion and patience truly reshape an entire civilization? Or is this just a bold gamble to buy time? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this extraordinary journey. 2 months had passed since Elias and Commander Lyra made their agreement, and something was changing aboard the Andromeda. Laughter, once a foreign sound on the warship, now echoed through its halls. The soldiers still followed orders with military precision, but the way they interacted had shifted. It wasn't just fear or cold obedience anymore. It was respect. It was warmth. Lyra noticed it all. She watched from a distance as soldiers volunteered to help each other during missions. Not because they were afraid of punishment, but because they wanted to. She watched Elias teaching them not just Earth games, but skills like negotiation, conflict resolution, even how to solve problems without violence. And she found herself curious. No, more than that, captivated. That night, she summoned Elias to the observatory, a vast chamber with one wall made entirely of glass, looking out into the endless stars. When Elias arrived, she stood alone. No battle armor, just a simple Navy uniform. Commander, Elias greeted, stepping beside her. Lyra, she corrected softly, still gazing into the void. When it's just us, you can call me Lyra. Elias nodded, not showing any surprise at this rare invitation. They stood in silence for a while, staring at the breathtaking spread of the universe. What have you done to them? Lyra finally asked, her voice low but tight with tension. Done to who? Elias replied, though he already knew. to my soldiers, to my crew. Lyra turned to face him. They're different. Different in a good way or a bad way? Lyra hesitated, considering carefully. I don't know. They still follow orders. They still complete their missions. But they smile. They help each other. They offer improvements without being asked. And that unsettles you? Elias asked gently. It confuses me, Lyra admitted, the starlight reflecting in her violet eyes. In all of the Alliance's history, strength has always come from strict discipline and the fear of consequences. But you're creating a different kind of strength. I didn't create it, Elias said softly. It was already inside them. I just showed them where to find it. Lyra stepped to the control panel and dimmed the lights, allowing the full brilliance of the galaxy to shine through. Millions of stars glittered like diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. I've been studying Earth's history, she said. Endless wars, brutality, greed. Your species is no better than ours. So why do you believe your way is better? Because we've learned from our mistakes, Elias answered. Each generation tries to do better than the last. We're still learning, still growing. Lyra let out a soft laugh, a rare, almost musical sound. You speak as if your people are still children. In a way we are, Elias agreed. Compared to your alliance, our civilization is still very young, but sometime children can see things adults have forgotten. Lyra moved closer, so close Elias could feel the faint warmth radiating from her. In the dim starlight, she looked almost otherworldly, powerful and achingly beautiful. If I killed you right now, she murmured, idly tracing a fingertip along the hilt of the knife at her side, would you be afraid? The question hung between them, not as a threat, but as something raw and painfully honest. Elias met her gaze without flinching. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of living a life without meaning. For a moment, time itself seemed to freeze. Lyra stood motionless, her eyes wide as if struck by an invisible force. For the first time since they'd met, she lost complete control over her emotions. A life without meaning, she repeated, her voice rough and low. How do you define meaning, Elias of Earth? Elias turned back toward the stars, his voice distant but steady. On Earth, there was a philosopher named Viktor Frankl. He survived a concentration camp, a place where humanity showed its absolute worst. And there, in that hell, he discovered that even when everything is stripped away, freedom, family, dignity, there is still one thing no one can ever take from you: the freedom to choose how you respond. He turned back to her, eyes burning with quiet intensity. Meaning comes from 3 sources: doing work that matters, loving others deeply, and facing inevitable suffering with courage. I'm not afraid to die, because I know I've lived a meaningful life. Lyra stepped back, as if overwhelmed by the weight of his words. She turned away, but not quickly enough to hide the flicker of emotion crossing her face. And what about me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Commander of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, conqueror of hundreds of worlds, responsible for the deaths of billions. Do you think my life has meaning? It was not a challenge. It was not a trap. It was a real question. A raw, open wound, finally exposed. Elias didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped forward and placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a gesture no one had dared for decades. I think, he said softly, that meaning isn't something you have. It's something you build day by day, choice by choice. It's never too late to create new meaning, Lyra. She turned back toward him, their faces only inches apart. And in her eyes, Elias saw something he had never seen before. A spark of hope and fear. Not fear of an enemy or defeat, but fear of change. Fear of opening a door that could never be closed again. Teach me, she whispered, a confession, a plea. Teach me how to create meaning, Elias. For a moment, the universe around them seemed to hold its breath. Not a silence of emptiness, but a silence of connection. A bridge forming between 2 civilizations, 2 worlds, two souls. "I'll try," Elias said, his voice warm and steady. That night, as Lyra left the observatory, she felt something breaking open inside her, not shattering like a failure, but cracking like an old shell, making way for something new to grow, something alive. Have you ever wondered what truly gives your life meaning? Is it power, achievement, or the deep connections we build with others? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss Lyra's next step on her extraordinary journey. 3 months had passed since that night in the observatory, and a quiet shift had taken place aboard the Andromeda. No one spoke about it, but everyone felt it. Commander Lyra appeared less often at public drills. Her orders remained firm, but there was a new quality to them now. A softness, a deeper thoughtfulness behind every decision. And she began watching Elias. Not like a jailer watching a prisoner, but like a student, studying a teacher. She used security cameras, sometimes even advanced stealth tech. She wanted to know, did Elias truly live what he taught? Or was it all an act? One quiet night, while most of the crew was off duty, Lyra noticed Elias slipping out of his upgraded quarters. Once a cell, now a modest private room. There was something different about him. The way he glanced around, checking for watchers before heading swiftly toward the lower decks. Intrigued, Lyra activated her personal cloaking device and followed. Elias moved through empty hallways, down rarely used stairwells, until he reached a maintenance level near the auxiliary engines, a place most crew avoided because of the noise and vibration. He stopped at a small service door, expertly entered a code, and slipped inside. Lyra waited, then approached. Silent, invisible. Inside, the space was little more than a forgotten storage room, cluttered with old crates and spare parts. But in one corner, Elias had made himself a tiny refuge, a blanket spread across the floor, a few handmade items, and the soft glow of a makeshift lamp. And in his arms, Lyra froze, her breath catching in her throat. Curled against Elias's chest was a luminari, a rare, luminous creature highly prized by Alliance laboratories. The little being trembled, its natural light flickering weakly. Its delicate wings were torn, and its wide, frightened eyes clung to Elias with desperate trust. "Shh, it's okay," Elias whispered, so gently Lyra had to strain to hear. "I know your wing hurts, but we're going to fix it, I promise." With astonishing tenderness, he pulled out a jar of healing salve. Lyra recognized it instantly. It was a high-grade regenerative gel from the medbay. Carefully, Elias began applying the ointment to the wounded wing. The luminari whimpered, but didn't try to flee. I know, Elias murmured, his voice a soothing balm. "It stings now, but it'll get better soon. You're very brave." Lyra watched, stunned into absolute stillness. 2 weeks ago, she'd received a report. One of the experimental luminari had gone missing. The scientists assumed it had perished, but clearly, Elias had found it. Or maybe rescued it. "And that's it," Elias said softly as he finished bandaging the wing. "Now, a little treat for being so brave." He pulled out a small vial of softly glowing nectar. Lyra's eyes widened. Zephyrian nectar. Rare, priceless. Usually reserved only for the Alliance's highest elite. How had Elias gotten it? And why waste it on a lab specimen? As if sensing her thoughts, Elias whispered to the tiny creature as it eagerly drank the nectar. "Every life matters, not because of what they can do for us, but simply because they exist." That's something we humans try to remember, even when we forget. As the luminari fed, its light grew stronger, shining a vibrant sapphire blue. The glow lit up Elias's face, and for a moment he looked almost ethereal, bathed in pure, quiet joy. And Lyra felt something tighten in her chest. This wasn't a performance. This wasn't strategy. Elias didn't know he was being watched. This was who he truly was. A man willing to risk himself for a fragile creature that most of the galaxy would deem worthless. As Elias carefully tucked the creature into a cozy nest, Lyra stepped back. She had seen enough, but as she turned, her foot accidentally nudged a crate, a small clatter breaking the silence. Elias stiffened, his head snapping up. "Hello? Is someone there?" Lyra froze, heart pounding. The cloak hid her from sight, but not from sound. After a few tense moments, Elias exhaled and shook his head. "Just the engines," he said softly, turning back to the luminary. "Don't worry, little one, it's nothing." Lyra slipped away, silent and unseen, but her mind churned with feelings she couldn't name. The next night, Elias returned to his hidden refuge. When he opened the door, he stopped short. Sitting neatly beside his blanket was a much larger vial of Zephyrian nectar in a pristine, state-of-the-art medical kit. The kind reserved only for the Alliance's finest healers. No note, no explanation. Just a silent gift left by unseen hands. Elias looked around the room, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. The luminary glowed brighter, sensing his happiness. "Looks like we have a new friend," Elias whispered to the little creature. Far down the hall, hidden in the shadows, Lyra watched through a security feed, and for the first time in years, felt a warm, aching light swell in her chest. It was something she had almost forgotten existed. Happiness. We often seek grand moments to change our lives, but sometimes it's the small acts of kindness that truly open our hearts. What do you think is really changing inside Commander Lyra? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next beautiful turn in this incredible story. Commander Lyra, your latest report has caused great concern within the High Council. Queen Zarvia's cold voice echoed across the main conference hall. It had been 6 months since Elias's capture. 6 months of small, gradual, but undeniable changes, before Lyra now stood 7 massive holograms, the members of the Andromeda High Council, the most powerful body in the entire Alliance. Their faces were stern, distant, and today furious. "I find this hard to understand, Your Majesty," Lyra replied, her voice calm despite the heavy pounding in her chest. "All operational metrics have improved. Mission success rates are up by 28%. Resource consumption is down by 15%. Morale is at a record high." "This isn't about efficiency," roared Supreme Commander Craxus, a towering figure clad in dark armor. "It's about purity of method. You allowed a lesser creature to corrupt an Alliance warship?" Lyra felt a surge of anger, but controlled it, a skill she had only recently learned. If the methods of this so-called lesser creature produce superior results, shouldn't we reconsider their value? Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the council. "Commander Lyra," Queen Zarvia said smoothly, her voice sugar-coated with danger, "are you defending the human?" Lyra stood straighter, feeling the full weight of the future pressing on her shoulders. "I am defending the results, Your Majesty. Results that speak for themselves." "They called you the Iron Hand of Andromeda," Craxus sneered, "but now you've gone soft. You've allowed this human to spread dangerous ideas. Compassion, tolerance, peace, ideas that could erode the very foundation of our alliance." "I fail to see how higher performance is a sign of weakness," Lyra answered steadily, though inside she was trembling. "Enough!" Queen Zarvia slammed her hand down, causing her hologram to flicker. "We have observed this situation long enough. Reports from loyal personnel aboard your ship confirm that your entire chain of command has been compromised. Your soldiers question orders instead of obeying blindly. They show concern for the feelings of other beings." She spat the word like poison. "This cannot be tolerated," Zarvia continued. "Elias Wright has become a threat to the security of the entire Alliance. The High Council has decreed he must be terminated immediately." Her hand struck the table again, the sound like a hammer sealing a coffin. A chill ran down Lyra's spine. "Terminated? But Your Majesty, this is a rare opportunity for learning. We could—" "This is not a suggestion," Craxus snapped. "This is a direct order from the High Council, and you know the consequences of disobedience." A heavy silence blanketed the room. "I understand," Lyra said at last, her voice steady but hollow. "I will carry out the order." "Good," Zarvia said with a thin smile. And Commander Lyra, after you complete this task, you will report for psychological reorientation. Clearly, you need recalibration. The holograms blinked out, leaving Lyra alone in the vast empty room. She stood frozen for several long minutes. Inside her mind, two worlds collided. On one side, the Andromeda Alliance. Everything she had ever known, her life, her honor, her identity. On the other, something new. Something Elias had awakened in her, a glimpse of a different way of living, a different kind of strength. "Commander," her first officer's voice broke the silence from the doorway. "Is everything all right?" Lyra turned, her face unreadable thanks to years of emotional discipline. "Prepare the strike team, immediately." "Strike team?" The lieutenant blinked, confused. "But we have no mission orders." "Now we do," Lyra cut him off sharply, and summoned prisoner Elias Wright to the main command deck, alone. An hour later, Elias entered the command deck. He still wore his worn Earth clothing, but now somehow it looked like a uniform of honor. "Commander," he greeted warmly, smiling as if this were any other day. "You asked for me?" Lyra stood with her back to him, staring out the massive window at the endless stars. "The Council has ordered your execution," she said bluntly. "They see you as a threat to the Alliance." Elias didn't flinch. He simply nodded, as if he had expected this outcome. "I understand. Do you?" Lyra turned, her voice almost trembling. "Do you understand they want to reprogram me too? That everything we've built here, all the progress we've made, will be wiped away?" "I understand," Elias said gently, "and I understand something even more important. You have changed, Lyra, and once change has taken root inside you, no one can take it away." She moved closer to him, so close she could feel his warmth. "You don't understand. I have no choice. This is a direct order. If I don't obey..." "We always have a choice, Lyra," Elias said, using her real name, not her title. "That's what I've been trying to show you. Our last and ultimate freedom is the ability to choose how we respond." Lyra closed her eyes, her mind a storm of conflict and pain. 6 months ago, she would have obeyed without hesitation. But now, "I have spent my life serving the Alliance," she whispered. "I believed in our mission, in our supremacy, my titles, my honors, my purpose, all tied to the Alliance. And now," Elias asked softly, "and now, I don't know anymore," Lyra confessed, her voice breaking. "I see what you've done. I see how you cared for the Luminari, how you taught my soldiers, not for glory, not for power, but simply because it was right." She turned back toward the window. "I stand between two worlds, Elias, and I cannot belong to both." Elias stepped beside her, staring into the infinite stars. "What happens if you disobey?" he asked. "I'll be branded a traitor," Lyra said bitterly. "Hunted across the stars. Everything I built, everyone I know. They'll all turn against me." She turned to face him, her violet eyes blazing with an emotion she had never allowed herself to feel before. "Why? Why should I give up everything for you, a human I once considered nothing more than a primitive creature?" Elias met her gaze without fear. "Not for me, Lyra, for the person you're becoming." Those words struck deep, deeper than any weapon ever could. From the distance, the alarm sirens blared. On the main screen, a massive warship appeared, the flagship of Supreme Commander Craxus. "They don't trust me to carry out the order," Lyra said grimly. "They're here to make sure the job gets done." She turned to Elias, her decision already made. "We have less than 20 minutes before they dock. You need to know, and if I take this path, there's no turning back." "I know," Elias said simply, "and so do I." "Then follow me," Lyra said, her eyes burning with a fierce new light. "We have work to do." As they rushed from the command deck, Lyra realized something stunning. For the first time in her life, she was acting not out of duty, not out of loyalty to an empire, but because it was right. And in that realization, she found a freedom she had never known. How does someone walk away from everything they once believed in, for a new truth they've just begun to see? Do you think Lyra made the right choice? And will they be able to escape the unstoppable force of the Andromeda Alliance? Share your predictions in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the explosive climax of this incredible story. All crew members report to the Grand Hall immediately. This is a direct order from Commander Lyra. The announcement echoed throughout the warship Andromeda, sending hundreds of soldiers rushing to gather. Less than 10 minutes had passed since Lyra had made her decision, and in less than 10 more, Supreme Commander Craxus's ship would arrive. The Grand Hall quickly filled with officers and recruits alike, from the highest-ranking veterans to the newest soldiers like Zex-9. Tension buzzed in the air, whispers spreading fast. Everyone had seen the massive warship approaching. Lyra stepped onto the platform with Elias standing at her side. She wore not her usual battle armor, but a simple command uniform, stripped of any Alliance insignias. For many, it was the first time they had ever seen her like this. "Crew of the Andromeda," she began, her voice clear and commanding. "For the past 6 months, we have undergone a transformation. We've learned new ways to work together, to understand each other, to complete missions not out of fear, but out of respect." She paused, sweeping her gaze across the crowd, locking eyes with as many faces as she could. These changes did not happen by accident. They began when we welcomed someone from another world among us, someone who challenged everything we thought we knew about strength, leadership, and purpose. She turned slightly, nodding toward Elias. "And today the High Council has ordered his execution." The whispers died instantly, replaced by stunned silence. All eyes turned to Elias, who simply smiled, calm and unshaken. "But I will not carry out that order," Lyra said, her voice steady, unwavering, "because it goes against everything I now know to be right." An eruption of noise broke out across the hall. Shock, disbelief, confusion. Never before in Alliance history had a commander publicly refused a direct order from the High Council. "Supreme Commander Craxus's ship will dock in 8 minutes, Lyra continued. "They will take command of this vessel, execute Elias Wright, and subject me to reorientation, stripping away my free will, reducing me back to a mindless tool." She drew in a deep breath. "I will not let that happen, but I will not order any of you to stand against the Alliance. This must be your choice." Lyra stepped down from the platform, standing shoulder to shoulder with her crew, something she had never done before. In these past 6 months, we've learned that true strength doesn't come from fear or threats. We've learned that compassion isn't weakness. We've seen that respect makes us stronger, not weaker. The alarm sirens wailed louder now. Craxus's ship was closing in. "I believed in the Alliance my whole life," Lyra said, her voice lower but no less powerful. "I believed our mission was to bring order to a chaotic universe. But now I see, order without compassion, without love, is just another form of imprisonment." She looked into the eyes of her crew, the men and women she had once led with fear. Now she reached them with something far greater. "We are strong, not because we dominate, but because we care." Those 8 simple words echoed through the hall like a revolutionary anthem. Some veteran soldiers frowned in doubt, but others, especially those who had worked closely with Elias, began to nod. "I and Elias will leave this ship in a scout vessel," Lyra announced. "We will seek a new place, a new way of living. Anyone who wishes to join us is welcome. Those who choose to stay, you have my respect and understanding." A long, heavy silence. Then from the back of the crowd, Zex-9 stepped forward, trembling slightly but resolute. "I will go with you, Commander," the young recruit said, his voice thick with emotion. "Elias saved me when no one else would. I'll do the same for him." Next came the first lieutenant, a battle-hardened veteran who had served at Lyra's side for more than a decade. "6 months ago, I didn't understand," he said, "but now I do. Let me fight alongside you once more, Commander." Another followed, then another, then dozens, stepping forward one after another, pledging their loyalty not to the Alliance, but to Lyra and the new vision she and Elias had awakened. Lyra felt a surge of emotion rise within her. Pride, gratitude, and something else. Hope. "The Alliance will not stop hunting us," she warned. "Our lives will not be easy." "Meaningful lives are never easy," Elias finally spoke, his voice strong and steady. "But they're always worth it." Suddenly, the ship's comms crackled to life. Supreme Commander Craxus's cold, booming voice filled the Grand Hall. "Commander Lyra, prepare your ship for inspection. We will dock in 3 minutes. Elias Wright will be surrendered immediately." Lyra looked around at her crew. No, not her crew. Her allies, her family. They were not standing out of fear. They were standing out of choice. "Are you ready?" she asked, a rare smile touching her lips. "To change history?" A thunderous roar answered her. Hundreds of hands shot up in a gesture of unity. A gesture the Andromeda Alliance had never seen before. Beside her, Elias stood tall, pride and emotion shining in his eyes. "You've changed everything," he said softly. Lyra shook her head, her eyes burning with fierce determination. "We changed everything, and this is only the beginning." As they raced toward the scout bay, preparing for the battle and the future. Ahead, Lyra felt a massive weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the Iron Hand of Andromeda. She wasn't an enforcer of fear. She wasn't a tool of the Empire. For the first time, she was simply Lyra, and that was enough. Sometimes it only takes one person standing for what's right to spark a change far greater than themselves. Where will this uprising lead? Can love truly overcome power? And when faced with an impossible choice, will you choose the safe path or the right one? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see the epic conclusion of this extraordinary story. All stations, battle positions, activate defensive systems. Lyra's voice rang out across the scout ship Nebula as it veered behind a small moon, desperately trying to evade the 3 Alliance pursuit vessels. It had been 4 hours since their historic uprising, and the chase showed no signs of slowing. Inside the ship, designed for just 12 explorers, 42 people were crammed together. Those who had chosen to stand with Lyra and Elias. Overcrowded but united, anxious but determined, they worked with perfect coordination, pushing the small vessel to its limits. "How much longer until we reach the green belt?" Lyra barked, her hands steady on the controls. 17 minutes, Zex-9 replied, his voice shaking as he scanned the readings. "But the pursuit ships will catch us in 12. Lyra gritted her teeth. The green belt, a dense asteroid field cloaked in cosmic fog, was their only shot at hiding. If they could make it there, they might have a chance to regroup. If they were caught before that... Commander, her first lieutenant, now the only officer officially remaining, called from the engine room. "We can't maintain this speed. The drives will overload in 7 minutes. Then we'll have to fight," Lyra decided without hesitation. Elias, tending to the lightly wounded in the chaos of the escape, lifted his head. "Fight? Against 3 Alliance warships? We don't stand a chance." "We don't need to win," Lyra said, a fierce light flashing in her eyes. "We just need to buy enough time." She turned to her ragtag crew. "I need 3 volunteers for a dangerous mission." No one was surprised when Elias stepped forward first. "I'll go." "No," Lyra said sharply. "We need you here. You are why we're fighting." "And that's exactly why I have to go," Elias insisted. "I won't hide while others risk their lives for me. That's not what I taught you." Lyra stared at him, wanting to argue, but knowing he was right. Leadership wasn't about command, it was about service. "All right," she said finally. "You, me, and Zex-9. We'll take the dropship." The plan came together quickly. A smaller lifeboat, hastily armed with basic weaponry, would launch to draw the enemy's fire, while the Nebula shut down its engines and drifted silently, hoping to slip past unnoticed. "This is a suicide mission," the lieutenant warned grimly as they prepared the dropship. "No," Lyra said, her voice like iron. "This is a mission of hope." 10 minutes later, the dropship detached, blasting away at maximum speed. As predicted, the Alliance vessels immediately picked up the small ship and gave chase. Inside the cramped cockpit, Lyra, Elias, and Zex-9 braced for the fight. "Remember the plan," Lyra said firmly. "We don't have to destroy them. Just slow them down long enough for Nebula to reach the belt. Then we run." Elias nodded, though they all knew the odds. Survival was slim. The first pursuer caught up faster than expected. An alarm blared as green energy blasts slammed into their shields, shaking the tiny craft violently. "Shields down to 62%, Zex-9 shouted in panic. "Return fire," Lyra ordered, and Zex-9 unleashed their limited arsenal. The bolts hit the enemy ship, but barely scratched it. A mosquito attacking a lion. "I have an idea," Elias said suddenly, "but it's dangerous." "Everything's dangerous now," Lyra replied grimly. "Talk." "See that asteroid field ahead?" Elias pointed. "I can rig the energy core to create a controlled explosion. Trigger a chain reaction between the asteroids. It could buy us the time we need." Lyra considered. "It'll destroy this ship." "Not if we time it right," Elias said. "We eject in the escape pod, but we have to move fast." There was no better option. Lyra steered them into the asteroid field, dodging massive rocks, while Elias and Zex-9 scrambled to rewire the reactor. The Alliance ships followed, confident in their firepower, blind to the trap being laid. "Ready!" Elias shouted as they reached the perfect spot, surrounded by 3 giant asteroids, enemy ships right behind. "Zex-9, get to the escape pod now!" Lyra barked. As Zex-9 ran, a blast from the enemy ship slammed into them, tearing through the hull. The cabin decompressed violently, sending debris flying. "Lyra!" Elias shouted, lunging for her. Time seemed to slow. Lyra turned just in time to see a jagged piece of metal hurtling toward her. And then Elias was there, shoving her aside, taking the blow himself. The sound of metal piercing flesh was sickening. Blood sprayed. Elias collapsed. A massive shard lodged deep in his back. "No!" Lyra screamed, catching him before he hit the floor. "Trigger it!" Elias gasped, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Cradling him with one arm, Lyra reached out with the other and hit the detonation sequence. The reactor began its overload countdown. Red lights flared. 30 seconds to core breach, the ship's AI announced calmly. Lyra dragged Elias toward the escape pod, leaving a trail of blood across the metal floor. Zex-9 helped pull him inside. 19, 18... The pod blasted away just as the dropship exploded behind them, igniting the asteroids in a roaring chain reaction. The shock wave tore through space, shattering 2 of the pursuing ships instantly. The third, crippled and burning, veered away. Inside the cramped escape pod, Lyra cradled Elias against her, heart pounding in terror. His blood soaked her uniform. The metal shard was still embedded deep, too dangerous to remove without medical equipment. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, trying to convince herself more than him. "We'll rendezvous with Nebula. They'll have med techs. You're going to be okay." Elias smiled faintly, his face pale from blood loss. "You know, this is the first time you've ever hugged me." Lyra blinked, realizing he was right. Despite everything they had survived together, this was the first time she truly held him. It felt strange and devastatingly real. "Don't talk," she commanded, her voice cracking. "Save your strength." "No," Elias murmured, weaker now. "You need to hear this. In case You're not going to die," Lyra snapped, tears she didn't even know she had beginning to fall. "I forbid you to die, Elias Wright. That's a direct order." A weak chuckle escaped his lips, followed by a bloody cough. "You know, I was never very good at following orders." She held him tighter, feeling his heartbeat faltering against her chest. 6 months ago, she would have watched a dying being like this with cold detachment. But now fear and grief roared inside her, unbearable. "You're not allowed to die," she whispered fiercely. "How can I build a new world without you leading the way?" Elias looked up at her, his green eyes still bright even as his body failed. "You don't need me to lead. You already know the way. You just need the courage to walk it." Lyra shook her head, her face contorted with raw emotion. Fear, sorrow, and something else. Something even more powerful she didn't dare name. "If you die, I will never forgive you," she said, tears falling freely now. "You changed me, Elias. You showed me the person I didn't know I could become." Elias lifted a trembling hand, brushing away a tear from her cheek. "Promise me one thing." "Anything," she whispered, pressing his hand against her face. "Finish what we started. Show them. There's another way to love." With one final shuddering breath, Elias closed his eyes, going limp in her arms. "Elias," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Elias!" In the tiny escape pod drifting among the stars, Commander Lyra, once the coldest, fiercest warrior of the Andromeda Alliance, held the man from Earth who had taught her the meaning of love, and for the first time in her life, she wept without restraint. Zixx-9 sat silently across from them, witnessing something no one in the Alliance had ever seen before. A commander with an open heart. Can love survive even death? Do the greatest sacrifices create the greatest changes? Will Elias survive his devastating wounds? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the emotional conclusion of this extraordinary journey. 5 years can change everything. Twin suns bathe the lush valleys of Terra Nova in golden light, where a small village had blossomed, a place where Andromeda technology and Earth design blended into a uniquely harmonious community. On a small hill overlooking the village, Lyra stood before a group of newcomers, refugees from distant worlds, drawn by whispers of a third way, a path different from empire or rebellion. 5 years ago, Lyra began, her voice no longer cold and sharp, but warm and sure. "I believe strength came from fear, that to earn respect, we had to be feared, that to rule, we had to be ruthless." She no longer wore battle armor, but simple, comfortable clothes, deep blue, flowing with the breeze. Her hair, once tightly bound, now danced freely in the wind. "And then," she continued, "a man from Earth taught me that true strength isn't measured by the power to hurt or to conquer, but by the power to heal and to connect." She glanced down at the valley where children of every race played together. Pale-skinned Andromedans, wide-eyed refugees from Sirius, and children of mixed heritage, unions that once would have been forbidden under the Alliance's old rule. "We are not an empire," Lyra said, "nor are we rebels. We are simply those who believe in a different way of life, one built on cooperation instead of conquest, on compassion instead of control." A burst of laughter echoed behind the group. Everyone turned to see a small girl, about 4 years old, running up the hill, her dark, curly hair flying, her bright green eyes sparkling, eyes that mirrored Elias's. "Mama!" the little girl cried, arms outstretched. Lyra smiled, a smile so natural now, a smile that once had been rare and guarded, and scooped her daughter into her arms. "Apologies for the interruption," a warm voice called out. Someone was just a little too excited to see what her mother was doing. Elias crested the hill, his movements still stiff, a lingering reminder of old wounds, but alive, a miracle born from a fusion of human grit and Andromeda medicine. A faint scar traced down the side of his face, but the smile remained, just as warm as the day he first boarded the Andromeda. "It's all right," Lyra said, handing their daughter into his arms. "I was just telling them about our journey." Elias nodded to the newcomers. "Welcome to Terra Nova. This isn't paradise. We're not perfect, but here, we try. Every day, we try to be better than we were the day before." The little girl reached for a softly glowing purple flower nearby. "Hope," Elias said gently. "Remember, you have to ask the flower before picking it." "I forgot," Hope whispered. She leaned down, peering earnestly at the blossom. "I'm sorry, flower. May I please pick you?" Lyra watched her daughter with open pride. Hope, the name they had given her, was the living symbol of everything they had fought for. A future where races could not only coexist, but learn and love and thrive together. The Alliance still hunts us, Lyra admitted, turning back to the crowd. But with every passing year, more people from more worlds find their way here. And I believe one day even the Alliance will have to recognize there's a better way. She placed a hand gently on the shoulder of a young refugee, his fearful eyes reminding her of Zex 9 in the early days. I can't promise you safety. I can't promise wealth or power, but I can promise you this. Here, you are free to be who you truly are. And that is the most precious gift in the universe. As the gathering ended, Lyra, Elias, and their daughter walked back toward their home. A simple, cozy house on the edge of the village, its garden filled with strange and beautiful creatures, including a fully grown luminari, now glowing bright under the setting suns. "Think they'll stay?" Elias asked, hope dozing in his arms. "Some will, some won't," Lyra replied, looking up at the deepening sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Like us, they have to find their own way." At the gate of their home, Lyra paused, looking back at the village. 5 years ago, she could never have imagined this life. A life not built on conquest and control, but on creation and nurturing and living. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly, a question she still sometimes whispered to herself during the quiet moments. Elias placed his free hand on her shoulder, his gaze full of understanding. "You've asked me that 100 times, he said with a smile. "And you've never truly answered," Lyra teased lightly. "Because I wanted you to find the answer for yourself," he said. "But if you're asking whether I regret it," he looked into her eyes that had transformed from cold and guarded to open and bright, from fearful and fierce to full of love and peace. "Not for a single moment," he said, simply and truthfully. Lyra nodded, a fresh resolve lighting within her. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'll start teaching them self-defense, not so they can kill, but so they can protect. I want them to understand true strength isn't about control." "And what is it about?" Elias asked, though he already knew. Lyra turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the vast, waiting universe stretched out before them. "True strength is about transformation," she said, "turning enemies into friends, fear into hope, loneliness into love." They stepped inside their home, warm light spilling out into the twilight, and on the hill where they had just stood, the softly glowing flowers shimmered in the night, like stars fallen from the heavens, steadfast, luminous, and full of hope. Maybe the greatest changes begin not with grand battles or violent revolutions, but with small acts of kindness, a brave decision, or simply refusing to believe that fear and power must always go hand in hand. The journey of Lyra and Elias reminds us, even in the vastness of the universe, there is no force greater than the courage to see through another's eyes and to dream of a better future. Thank you for following this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with the people you love. And be sure to leave a comment. We'd love to hear what you think about this story.